Okay. If I could capture your attention for a moment. Normally I like to wander around and be sort of in the middle of everybody, but since I've been told that I can't leave that little device, here I am. So sorry to be lecturing in a sense, but and I guess, yeah, that's a good idea with the door. That'd be a good idea. Are we playing music or is somebody else playing music? Okay. Well, what we want to do is either start or not start. So, seems like we're caught in the middle for a moment. Okay. Let me ask you a question, if I may. How many of you attended yesterday's session? 3 of you. So it's only 3 of you, so forgive me if I repeat a couple of things that were said yesterday. And at any point, you are more than welcome to jump in with questions. You do not have to wait for me to finish or to do whatever. Jump in, interrupt, throw an opinion, throw in a concern or an issue. You are welcome. Come on in. My name is Willis Goldbeck. I do a program called Foresight Education, which we now have in schools in about 20 countries around the world. Schools like yours here, literally, at Carol Morgan, and like yours in many of the schools where you are actually located around Latin America, Central America. It is a program that is designed to help give you, the students, a set of skills that will enable you to more carefully help shape the future you're going to be living in. It is a class, it is a program, it is an approach to education that puts the power in your hands and takes it out of my hands. Because I don't any longer have the answers. I don't know that you'll have the answers, but for sure, you don't ask me what the answer is as to what's exactly going to happen in 2040, because I'll tell you right up front, I don't know, and no teacher knows, and sometimes that makes things uncomfortable for the teachers who are used to always being the answer people. This is an exploration. This is an opportunity for you to learn and do some new things, legitimately academic, but without the normal boundaries of certainty. And when you look into the future and start to work toward the future, you will see that what you're going to be dealing with is a big mess that people my age have left you to deal with. You're not going to avoid it. There is no answer, there is no escaping that you are entering a more complicated, more risky, more challenging world than any generation that came before you. So you might as well embrace it. No point in getting mad about it or disappointed about it. That won't do you a bit of good. But what will do you a bit of good is developing some of the techniques to look into that future and hopefully be able to have a positive influence based on what you feel is really important. I'm going to start by asking you what seems like it should be a terribly simple question. I'm going to ask you to just toss out, in 1 word or 2 words, something that describes who you are. You can't possibly be wrong, given the fact that you are describing yourself. So anything that you think that describes who you are. Go.
I am a hardworking student.
You're a student. Well, parenthetically hardworking, but the student part is a for sure, right? Okay. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Portuguese.
You're Portuguese. Okay, sir.
A brother.
You're a brother. Right next to you.
Teacher.
You're a teacher. In the back.
A friend.
Friend? Go ahead. Now just don't. I don't have to point at each of you. Say something.
Mother. Sorry. Mother.
Mother?
Dominican.
Dominican.
Teacher.
Teacher. Friend.
Happy.
A daughter.
A daughter. Happy? Did somebody say happy? Okay, I'm going to stop there because we're not accumulating a total list. The point is that amongst you, you have said you are a nationality, you are a relative, you are a characteristic, a personality, happy, sad, optimistic, pessimistic, whatever. You are a function, teacher. You are have a responsibility. You are a mother. You've done all of these things. And of course you're all right. It shows what is it that triggers your first thoughts, helps define how you look at the world you're in and how you think about the world you are going to be in. Interestingly, nobody said they were a boy or a girl. Nobody made a gender statement. Nobody spoke about a religion. Nobody spoke about an age. Those are not mistakes. That isn't something you failed at. It's just interesting that different groups jump on different characteristics for self-definition. Now I'm going to ask you to leap ahead. 2030. Seems like a long way away. It's directly around the corner. 2040, which we'll talk about, itself is only 26 years from now. Not far at all in the larger scheme of things. And then I'm going to ask you to think about what it is about 2050 that would make that date so important in the lives of every single person. But instead of saying who you are, I presume that most of you will still be what you are in 2030. What will be different? What is likely, not guaranteed, what is likely to be something else in your life by 2030? What will have been a change, something different?
Probably stress.
More stress, okay, yes sir.
More experience.
More, let's hope. Anybody over here?
Your age, you're not going to be the same age.
You're not gonna, that's for sure, you're gonna be at least.
Probably everyone in this classroom is gonna have a job.
No, oh, okay, so, and you're, therefore, since you said everyone, I assume you're including yourself. You're gonna be working. Oh, huge, there's a stressor, right? Job, home, stress, got it, okay? Any other characteristics that you think will be evidence of some significant change in your life? Possibly, reasonably, a reasonable possibility, yes?
Have a family.
Have a family, big deal. There goes the family, the home, the job, oh my God, the stress level is going up. And anybody from over here that notices something, think something's gonna be different?
Be smart.
That's a good objective, that's for sure. Interestingly enough, with all of that, nobody mentioned that they will have gone to college, which I imagine many of you will have done. Not necessarily everybody, but many. Some of you may even still be in college, getting a PhD or gone back to school. Many of you, I suspect, particularly given the breadth of your international background, will be living somewhere else. Chances of the bulk of you living in the town or the city that you're living in right now, the chances that diminishes the further out you go. It's not a problem. It means you're open to change. It means you've taken that job, that family obligation, and moved somewhere because of it, usually for a good reason. And particularly as a group of kids who, by and large, will have good opportunities in your lives. And that's important. It's a distinguishing characteristic in its own right. You are not ones who are probably going to be in desperate straits. That's obviously a wonderful thing. Let me ask you that who's got a sense of why is 2050 such an important year? Going to be, I mean, it's something that we know. It is one of those rare things where we have a fact that we can fall back on or fall ahead onto.
Halfway mark in like the 21st century. No? Okay.
It's the year in which predictably we will hit the 9 billion population mark for the world. 9 billion of you. I'm not sure by 2050 that will be 9 billion of you and me. So I may have made a space for somebody else by then. But you guys, presumably, will all be here by 2050. It's possible somebody will have had a bad accident, somebody will have had a disease, somebody will have had something unfortunate happen. But the vast majority of you will predictably be around in 2050. And you will be living in a world that is inexorably challenged by the fact there are 9 billion of you. Which means that between now and 2050, you as the custodians of that time need to be thinking and doing functionally, doing politically, doing economically, things to make it possible for the world to have 9 billion people without a total economic, political disaster. You throw in the difficulties of climate change, the sustainability you've been talking about in this conference, and so forth. That's not an easy pathway. Basically, every other generation has been able to look 20 or 30 years ahead at the rate of population growth and say, we can absorb that. No biggie. Let's move on. Let's be me-focused. 9 billion people, climate change and everything else that's going on, we need to become we-focused. Or else all of the me will be degraded because there are just going to be too many arms and legs, too many mouths to feed. We can do it. There's no question we can do it. It's not a doomsday scenario. But it is a scenario that suggests that your generation needs to be active in making that scenario work. Now, what we do in the Foresight class is we go through a series of steps. We ask you to pick a topic that you think would be fun to pay attention to in the course of the year. And it doesn't matter whether it's you do this independently, like in a seminar or in a semester-long class on the future, or you do it inside another academic endeavor, as Mr. Hammond did here, with all of those posters and things up there that are out of an English class. He didn't have any trouble making the future become part of an English class. And we're in a math room, and you read about what it takes for a good mathematician to do something. It sounds very much like studying the future, looking into the future. I assure you, I am not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination. I gave that up when I was younger than you. And so I've always had to hire somebody to take care of the math part of one of my companies or something. But it's those skills are incredibly valuable skills, and these future skills you could put into any program. But you can pick a topic, and we will ask you to pick topics. We would if this was a regular class. So that it guarantees that you are interested in what you're doing the rest of the time. There is no reason why I should tell you what you should be interested in, just because I'm the teacher. It is possible a school, a class could say, this is what we want all of you to research. This is what we want all of you to pay attention to. Okay. The work can progress just as well. My bias is that the interest level for a significant number of people dissipates pretty quickly. So I'm a great believer in letting you pick what you want to explore. Just toss out some topics that you would think might be interesting to look at going into the future. What would make it a fun experience for you, or at least a better experience for you to look at? There are no limits. Anything.
That I would want to do in the future.
Any topic you want to look at into the future. Psychology, the future of psychology. Think of it this way, the future of, and you fill in the blank. Future of, and you fill in the blank. Literature. Technology I'm going to take off the table because it's not specific enough. And I'll go more on that in a minute. Now, if you pick a technology, that may work. Future of computers. Okay, yes, sir.
Land management.
Land management, great topic. Yes.
Physics.
Physics, okay. We have a class in Prague that's using Foresight in their 11th grade physics class right now. Yes, please.
The future of sports psychology.
Sports psychologies, okay, yes. Architecture.
The animals.
Animals. Yes, sir. Government. All right, now that's a great, you get the idea very quickly, which is wonderful. I'm going to jump one step ahead out of respect for what I just did to you, which was take away your topic. One of the things that we do is we ask you to look at 6 major trends regardless of what topic you've taken. And what I've found over the years is that these 6 trends work as sort of big buckets. You could come up with a different definition of one of the trends. You could add one, you could subtract one. but I've never found a class or a topic that couldn't track most of its history and most of its looking ahead through the eyes of these 6 trends. I've obviously given one away a little bit already by my comment over there, but if you were, oh dear, I'm out of the range here.
I'm ready to take it.
Oh, you can do it. Well, because what I'd like to do is ask you all to give me the 6 trends that you think we might be looking at. Yes, sir.
Urbanization?
No. Yes.
Technology?
Yeah. Paying attention is a good thing, but this is not in order of importance or priority. It's just in the order that you say them. Technology is one. Yes?
Medicine?
No. Yeah? Yes?
Innovation?
No?
Politics?
Politics/government. That is correct. Okay, 2.
Economics.
Economics. Absolutely.
Psychology.
No.
Collaboration.
No.
Communication?
No.
Education?
No.
Medicine?
No. Environment. Who said environment? Yes.
Okay.
What has been 89% of these 3 days? Environment. Yes. Exactly. Environment. 2 to go. They get harder, interestingly enough. Now, everything that you have said, that I've said no to, I haven't said they weren't important. What they are is they fit inside. Yes, please.
Interaction?
Nope.
Education?
Nope.
Society?
Society. It's close. It may be what I'm thinking about, or I may be what you're thinking about.
Culture?
Culture. Thank you. Who said that? Good for you. Yes. Culture. That's what I used. And it could be what you were talking about. I don't know whether it is or not.
I don't know if they're gonna get that.
Okay. And culture is a real grab bag, because that's where you get at a lot of the behavioral things that a number of you mentioned. That's where you get at, well, should religion be a trend, so forth and so on. They're sort of all in here. The evolution of social media, and you immediately get overlaps. Is social media a trend element of the trends in technology or the trends in culture? Well, it takes a piece of technology, doesn't go anywhere unless you have a change in culture. So all of this is not to suggest the world is simple. It's to prove that the world is disgustingly complex. And the last one is one that affects everything, but people always think of it last, if they think of it at all, and that's demographics. Who are we? Yeah. Anyway, demographics spelled somehow. So those are the big 6. When you talk about things like education or medicine or whatever, those are professions, jobs, industries, and whatever, and they can all fit and be explored through all 6 trends. They don't have to stay under any one. It's not when I say under, I don't mean subservient to. I don't mean lesser than. I mean we're tracking trends as it affects all the topics you mentioned. Now, to do this kind of work, any topic of the future is grounded in the past. Everything that we might look at, everything you named, everything you were interested in, has a history. Some thousands of years. Literature, thousands of years. Some much less. They also have a present, what I think of as current conditions. And so when we actually turn you loose on your topics to start the work, we have you do a small history piece and a small current conditions piece, just so that you can see where all this stuff came from. And that can be just a couple of pages, it can be a 5 page, it's up to the teacher how much of and the length of the class, how much of an academic exercise to make that functionally in your future studies class. But from the standpoint of the design, it can be any length. And the point is to make sure that there's an understanding of the historical pathway and the current conditions before you look into the long-term future. And we start to see which of the trends are more influential for your topic than others. Because everything isn't going to be equal, nor should it be. Nor should it be. And the objective of this is to look at 3 different time frames: 2020, 2030, and 2040. It's not easy. 2020 is very easy. Lots of information. Probably 80%, that's not a finite number, but thereabouts, of the major things that are going to be happening and changing by 2020 are known today. They're known to a significant degree today. You may not have it precise, but pretty well. 2030 starts to get more foggy, more iffy. And what you will learn, if you were doing this in a real class, is that the world has done more research about things in 2025 than they have in 2030. Why is that?
It's closer.
No. I wish it was that logical. It's the quarter century. We tend to think in quarters and halves. There's no scientific reason for it whatsoever. None at all. 2050, there's more research on 2050 than there is on 2040, even though 2040 is a whole decade earlier. It's because people have been able to sell government agencies and foundations and corporations on the half-year markers more than they have on other breakdowns of time. You also find that research is done for completely idiosyncratic reasons. I did a big futures project in the 1990s for Pfizer, one of the world's major drug companies. They were looking at the long-term future possibilities within various aspects of the pharmaceutical world. I was involved with this with the Institute for Alternative Futures, which was the main group involved. And Pfizer wanted it on Pfizer 2029. Why? Nobody could tell you why. There was nothing in any logical approach to the research that would say 2029 is the moment, folks. It made it more expensive, it made it more difficult, it made it less precise. They were the client, it was going to be 2029. And it's on my mind because by chance I met with somebody who's a Pfizer senior officer today, about 3 weeks ago. And I said, had they ever seen their own report? And could she tell me why they picked 2029? She said, nobody can tell you why. Whoever was here at the moment that said that had a personal quirk, wanted 2029, and they got 2029. So it goes. If you were studying in a class and you came across let's say that kind of study about pharmaceuticals was relevant to your topic. You picked medicine, or you picked pharmaceuticals, or chemistry, or whatever else. And so you came across that as one of the pieces of work that you might have looked up. 2029 will mean nothing to you. That doesn't mean the work is invalid. It does mean that you can report on something that was done for 2029 under the catch of 2030. These are target dates. They are not religion. They are not that precise, and nor should they pretend to be. One of the ways I got into all of this was doing a big program in so-called strategic planning for a school in Southern California, in San Diego. And we wanted them to take a long-term look rather than typical 3-year plans. 3-year plans, almost by definition, shouldn't be called future plans. And I gave them all these interesting ideas. I thought they were interesting. And they rejected them because they were too futuristic. That is the point, but they were rejected. This was in 2006. I learned that the 100th anniversary of the school was going to be in 2026. I took all the same ideas, not one change, repackaged it as what the schools might look like in 2026, and let's study that. They approved the whole thing. Was there a rational thing from a scientific standpoint about 2026? Hell no. It was marketing. It made somebody feel comfortable. So that report is 2026. So I give you those examples so you don't get hung up on the idea of, oh my goodness, it's the wrong time. There's no wrong time when you're looking into the future. It's what you can find, where and when you can find it, and how you imagine it. It isn't all just research. It's part of imagining. Hopefully, if you do classes like this, you'll get largely into imagining. We look at 3 alternative futures. We do not do predictions. We do not ask you to predict what the future will be like. I think it's going to be this one. Boom. Don't find much value in that. The idea of alternatives gives you a place to start to see what you might want to influence and how you might want to influence it. To get to that, we ask you to make an aspiration statement about your own topic. What would you aspire to for your topic for 2040? That's we call that a huge push kind of aspiration. It's not, gee, I'd like it to be a little better. It's like, I want it to be spectacular. I want it to be high drama. I want it to be an incredible accomplishment, beyond probability. Because you don't ever have to accomplish your aspiration. You have to seek your aspiration. You have to be working toward it. You have to feel. It's a piece of expression that comes from the heart, not necessarily analytically from the mind. Most of the project comes from the mind and analysis. The aspiration comes from here. So what do you want? What would you care? Make you so happy if this could come about. And we ask you that for each of your topics. Obviously, we're not going to do that right now. And from that, with that sort of background, we then say, all right, our objective is to create 3 alternative futures, 3 scenarios. And you would learn in the class about how to build scenarios, how to do all of that. That's part of the skills that come out of this kind of a class. And the 3 that we do is what we call the expected or the most likely future, which people get pretty quickly because mentally it's always an extrapolation of what you know, what is. Secondly, we talk about decline. What if things really go badly? Now that doesn't mean a nuclear explosion where the world is gone, because that's kind of the end of the subject, that's the end of the class. You know, what do you do the next day? Not a hell of a lot. On the other hand, there's a lot about decline. Things are just going in the wrong way. The trends are going down, not up. Now, when I work on your topic, or you work on your topic, and you're looking at the decline scenario, she might be very happy, because if your subject area goes down, hers might go up. So decline is not automatically universal. Neither is success. Neither is continuation. You know, that's part of the fun of having a whole bunch of different topics. If everybody had the same subject, you'd only find one pathway, and then the other pathway, and that kind of be it. But once you have a lot of people looking at a lot of stuff, which is the real world, you then discover that the conflicts, the clashes, the complexity, the chaos of ups and downs throughout life. So we have the expected and the decline, and then we have the preferred or transformational is the third. The preferred is getting toward your aspiration. It's where the arrows, if you will, are going up. Doesn't mean you have to get there by 2040, particularly if you've made a really big aspiration. But you're obviously not going to say your preferred future is contrary to your aspiration. That'd be kind of contrary. So we want to keep that in line with desire, but now it's not just desire in terms of aspiration, it's desire supported by your assessment of a plausible future. The research you've done, the work you've done to build the case, if you will, for that plausible future. The thing is that you've got to build the case for all 3 scenarios. That's why we say it's not a singular prediction. And in a sense, you want to look at it like we're asking you to tell stories. You're standing in 2040 in a decline scenario. Describe to me the world of your subject under those circumstances. And you stand in front of the class and describe what the heck that looks like, it feels like, it might mean. And that can be both daunting and fun at the same time. So we look at those three. We talked a little bit about what wildcards could be. Those are completely off the wall events, unexpected events that can have a gigantic impact. And show you all sorts of different examples of where the future activities can tilt your subject matter one way or another, positively toward the transformational future, negatively toward a decline. And then you start to map out. Right now I do it with 2030, do it, pick any year you wanted, and take the story of your topic in 2030 and put it on the map next to her story of 2030. And by the time you have 15 or 20 stories of 2030, first of all, the wall is a mess. And second of all, it's exciting because you're seeing all of these contradictions pop up. That if yours is the way you describe it, his is, you just got rid of him. Yeah, and so forth. And so then we say, well, what about your 2040? And you've built something into 2030 that makes one of your design features of the story of 2040 impossible. So you have to go back and rethink that. You either have to rethink what you said for 2040, or you have to rethink the analysis for 2030, because sometimes you can't have both. And that's the real world. That's what people do in their real lives. It's future stuff, but it's also reality tested at the same time. Now let me wrap this up with a couple of comments about some of the things that are sort of taking place about the future that at least I feel contribute to the excitement of being able to do this work. I'm going to focus on one or two things so we have a little bit of a chance to explore it. One is robots. And I know there's a robot club here at school. I imagine many of you have done something reading about or messing around. No, absolutely not. Okay. Oops. All right. So, what's an example of a robot? Anybody? Yes? A supercomputer is not a robot. A robot may need a supercomputer to make it do certain things. But by itself, standing in the corner, a Cray or an IBM or whatever supercomputer is not performing robotic functions. It might drive lots of robots, but it isn't one of them. Yes, sir?
Like factories use robots to build cars.
I'm sorry?
Like factories use robots.
Absolutely. You see all of these arms doing what people used to do. And of course, robots can do it better, right?
It's like
And-
a tool.
Pardon me?
It's like a tool.
It's a tool, for sure. And by and large, if you've been correctly designed and tested, they don't make mistakes and they don't take coffee breaks. So they're extraordinarily economically efficient. They don't get health benefits, they don't take vacations. You know, if you think about it in terms of labor, it may be bad for somebody's job that they lost their job. That's another economic, demographic, societal question. But it's not hard to see why investing in robotic functions can be very, very exciting for a lot of companies, a lot of organizations. Now, we also have it very big in the military. Drones are robots. I'm sure you've heard of drones that fly around without a pilot and do good things or bad things, depending on where you are and what your perspective is. The drone doesn't care. The drone is without personality. The drone doesn't bleed. The drone is without emotion. Maybe the driver of the drone, 4,000 miles away, pushing the buttons, maybe he or she has compassion. Different story. The item does not. We also have this wonderful dog. I say dog because it looks like a dog. It could have looked like something else, but it's built to look pretty much like a four-legged big dog. Big, strong back. Built by Boston Dynamics, which was just bought by Google, because Google was in the process of buying everything that works. They buy it even before they know whether or not how they're going to use it, and it's a brilliant corporate strategy when you have that much money because they will figure out ways to make it connect to their other items. And if, I mean, they're building a driverless car and they're dealing with Google Glass. Are those two not going to come together? You betcha they are. But the day that somebody advocated Google Glass, they didn't have the car, and vice versa. You know, the innovation may be as much in how you put things together as how you create the individual items in their own right. But the Boston Dynamics dog, purchased by Google now, its primary purpose is to be able to carry massive amounts of stuff, weight, where on terrain that either people cannot go or people have to go and can't go with the weight. Now, who are those people? They're soldiers. They're on hills in Afghanistan. And the average soldier is carrying 130 pounds while they're walking around in 120-degree heat, or 3 hours later, 10-degree cold. It changes in places like Afghanistan from hour to hour. It's totally extraordinary. So now, here comes the Marine, and now he's got 30 pounds on, or she, and she's got the dog following her with all the equipment. And if the dog gets shot, the Marine doesn't bleed. There'll be lots of other applications for the same kinds of technology. But this stuff is going on right now. I said to the group yesterday, do any of you know someone who is robotic, who is a robot? The answer was no. The next question is, do any of you know someone who has a pacemaker, keeping their heart going? That person is part robotic. Anybody know somebody with who's had a total knee or a total hip? Guys, there are not a lot of athletes in this room. Yes, absolutely. And you start having significant replacement parts. You become decreasingly purely human. It does not mean you have reduced your humanity. You got to be careful about the words. But we are increasingly into the business of replacing bad body parts with good machine parts. We're putting chips into people to do all kinds of things, to monitor all kinds of body values. By body values, I mean things like, I don't mean economic value, I mean things like blood pressure, diabetes, all that kind of stuff. And those chips can report directly to your doctor 24/7 without you doing a thing. The fact that you didn't take a test no longer will be relevant. You are the test. You are 24/7 being tested inside out, not outside in. It's the reversal. It's inside out medicine versus outside in medicine. The same thing is happening in surgery. Anybody heard of the robotic surgery devices, Da Vinci device? Da Vinci device is this huge robot, multiple arms, multiple knife blades, camera arms, and that device in the hands of an extraordinarily well-trained physician can do neurosurgery on the brain better than any neurosurgeon on this earth. It cannot slip. It can't shake. It can't miss the target. It can't cut deeper than was desired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is the ultimate tool for that. And it's perfect for things like cancer surgeries in many cases, where you want to remove something very, very precisely, but not cut into that something, because if you cut into it, you release the cancer cells to metastasize elsewhere in your body. So you want to take out the cancer, but you got to be really careful about how you remove it, or else you could spread the cancer. And I did that. I don't mean I ran the machine. I mean I was on the receiving end of the machine. And it's totally extraordinary. It also reduces the amount of your surgical woundage, if you will. I had 7 incisions by a robot, the total cutting of which was half or less of what it would have been under a normal surgical procedure for exactly the same intended outcome. Yeah?
But if the machine is ran by a physician, by a human,
Yes.
isn't there still room for a mistake?
There is always room for a mistake. You are completely correct. But if the machine is set up correctly, and obviously you undergo certain tests and so forth. Plus you have a camera inside you so that there's a guidance mechanism visually, which is better than what a physician could see by looking in through all the blood and the this and the that, particularly for very precise things. So far, the results are absolutely extraordinary. Yes, it could go wrong. Yes, you could have the ultimate power failure, which would, depending on where the knife blade is at that moment, could be a real problem. But if you have a complete power failure when the surgeon is standing over you with the knife, it's not going to be a pretty picture either. There is no perfection. Technological advances of this magnitude don't come with pure guarantees or perfection. They come with quantum improvements. And you're always betting the odds anytime you put yourself on a table with a surgeon or with a machine. That's, to some degree, on you to try and make the best guess that you possibly can. One other thing that I believe that every issue that any of you will look at in the future, in your own lives or through a course, carries ethical implications. Because what you're ultimately doing is learning how to make choices. The way you will influence the future is by making choices. You make choices by doing nothing. You choose to do nothing, nothing changes. Or it changes without your opinion or your knowledge or your participation. You make a decision to do something, to accept something, to fight something, to agree or disagree. Those are all choices. And every choice has consequences, and all sets of consequences create ethical moments, ethical subsequent choices. So whether it's how to distribute a human organ when we know how and we have the organ, but the trouble is we have 7 people that need the organ and you have 1 organ, it's not a technological question anymore. It's an ethical question. And if I went around the room, you would find that many of you have a different sense of what the ethical decisions should be based upon. How do you value a human life? How do you say somebody is worth it when there are several people competing for the same solution? And we see the same thing with the fact that we now have more and more man-machine beings, and that'll increase dramatically in the next dozen years. What does it change the rights of a person because they become more machine or less machine? What about the machine that becomes more human-like? So now we have a group of robots, and by now I mean now, not 20 years from now, that if you put the robot beside a human worker, stacking shelves, for example, simplistic function. 1 human worker, 5 robots. The 5 robots can watch the human worker 3 or 4 times and learn what the human worker is doing and do it. They have observational qualities now built in. Observational qualities are one of the critical elements of being able to feel. If you can feel, you are starting to enter the realm where we say it's the most distinguishing characteristic of humans. What rights do they have? We now have plants. New research on plants that are starting to show that plants can, in fact, think. There is a neurobiology of certain plants, that plant tree roots can talk to other plant tree roots and affect their growth or distribution of roots and food. Now, this is early stage stuff. But if that continues to prove out, then all of that part of nature that we distinguish from humankind and animal kind because we think and they don't will no longer be true. And then are we going to have what? The next International Convention on the Rights of Tree Roots or something. It's harder and harder to distinguish, but it makes the world we're going to live in much more exciting. I think the bell is probably for us as well. Thank you so much for paying attention. Lobby for this. Go tell them you want to have the chance to explore your future.